Are you ready for the life that you've gotten comfortable with to be disrupted for sacred reasons? What if there is more to what is sacred than what you've been told? Have you been bought off by the right answers when what is more powerful is to ask the right questions? Welcome to Sacred Disruptions, where the sacred and the everyday collide, where we challenge what we've inherited and reimagine what faith could look like, engaging, free, deeply alive, and fully lived. My name is Alan Wicks, and I'm your host. My faith tradition is typically referred to as Christian, and this is not just another religious conversation about rules, proving who's right and wrong. It's meant to be an awakening, an invitation to rewrite the narrative. No matter what your faith tradition, if you've ever felt there's something more going on here, there's something bigger than me, there's something maybe out there, vastly out there, or something way down deep in here, and I need to tap into it. I know there's more. You're exactly where you need to be. You belong here. So now, I think this is the perfect time to pause and ask, what does a sacred disruption mean? What is a sacred disruption to you, to me, to us? A great place to begin is not just by defining what it is, but by exploring what it's not. Too often we inherit meanings from culture, tradition, or even religious systems without ever questioning them. So let's start there. Consider that sacred is not just something distant, untouchable, reserved for temples, rituals, or people with special titles. And that is what I thought, what I was taught. Sacred is not about perfection. It's not about purity or following a list of rules. Sacred is not an obligation. Sacred is not any of these things. What makes something sacred is a declaration that it is special and unique in purpose and value. I guess I'll say that again. What makes something sacred is that I declare, you say, that thing, that thought, that idea, that way of being, that way of living, that tradition is special and unique in both purpose and value. It's sacred. It's set apart. It's holy. So let me give an example. The woman I call my wife is sacred to me. How so? I declared her sacred on our wedding day. I declared her my wife, which gives her unique value and purpose in my life. I said, I do. I said, you're my wife. And that gave that woman, who happens to be my wife, set her apart from every other woman in the world. She's sacred to me. And that has altered my whole life. You see what I'm getting there? Okay, let's keep going. Let's make this real. Sacred isn't just about what happens inside of a church, a ritual, an event. It's about what happens inside of you and me and our relationships. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. I want you to take a look at this. Let's look at this together. The sacred is found in the ordinary. The sacred is in the messy. It's in the questions. It's in the stillness. It's in the fire of transformation. The sacred is in who you already are. That which has unique and special purpose and value is already who you are. Did you get that? Let me say it again. That which has unique and special purpose and value is already who you are before you earn it, before you prove it, and get this, even before we understand it. One of my mentors, Richard Rohr, I love his writings. I love his teachings. He says the sacred is not something you go to. It is something you wake up to. Let me ask you, what really do you consider sacred? Take a moment, think about it. Write it down. This is a good opportunity to take an assessment. What do I really think is sacred? Is it a place? Is it a practice? Is it a moment? Wow. How many of you have had a sacred moment called the birth of your child? How many of you have had a whisper from God and that came when you least expected it? A disruption? Yeah. Now let's look, now that we've opened up the meaning of sacred, let's talk about disruptions. Because if we're honest, most of us don't like them. Think about a time in your life when something unexpected interrupted your plans. How did it feel? Frustrating, chaotic, maybe even painful? My wife and I, about half of the year, we travel around the country in an RV. And on our last year's trip, we were driving up the west coast of California on our way to Washington State, and our plans got disrupted. There were forest fires all around up eastern Washington State, Oregon. Some of those areas, there were forest fires. And so we had to divert our path that we intended to go, our plans. They got interrupted. But one of the great things that happened is that we ended up at a destination that we hadn't planned to go to, which was right on the ocean, on the Pacific Ocean, right on the water. And we got to spend the whole week in an awesome place because our plans were disrupted. Disruptions often seem as negative. What if the disruptions in your life, the ones that shake you, stretch you, make you question everything, are actually sacred? What if a disruption is the exact thing you need to wake up to what is real? To shift out of a system of belief that isn't working, a relationship that's draining you, or a life that's you're simply settling for. Here's the truth. When you embrace the sacred, you become a disruption. And that's what these conversations are. Sacred disruptions. Who do we get to be? Who do we transform and evolve into? That we become the disruption. That's a great invitation. A disruption of what? A disruption of fear. A disruption to small thinking. A disruption to anything that tells you you are not enough. You and I, we're made in an image of God. At least by Christian tradition, that's one of the first few verses that in our writings, it says we were made in the image of God. Now, just consider that statement. Give that statement a chance to breathe. You and I were made in the image of God. And what comes to mind for me is that God is always present. God is the creator of all things. You're in that image. God is full of love. You and I are in that image, full of power, confident, sound, always expanding. God. Are we starting to see ourselves in light of that image? And when we begin to honor that, truly honor that, our very existence disrupts the lies, the limits, and the systems that keep us from living fully and freely. So as we go forward in these conversations, this podcast, these interviews, and all the things that we're going to do together on this platform, as we go forward, I'm asking you to listen for this. Where is the sacred calling you to disrupt what no longer serves you, no longer serves your family, no longer serves your community, no longer serves the world? And more importantly, will you and I answer? That's the question. Now, this conversation doesn't end here because the sacred is never finished disrupting us. Faith is not about finding the perfect answer. It's about leaning into the questions, embracing the mystery, and discovering what's possible when we step outside of thinking that disempowers us. The sacred is already at work in your life. The question is, will you let it disrupt you in the best way possible? I want to hear from you. Where is the sacred calling you to disrupt what no longer serves you? Let's keep this conversation going. Connect with me on Facebook, Instagram, X, Threads. I'd like to hear your thoughts, your comments. And if this episode sparked something in you, got you curious in any way, pass it on to a friend. These conversations are meant to be spread. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss what's next. Next time, we're going to be diving into what it may look like in practice, what it means to create a sacred context in your life that may elevate your life, expand what you're up to. That's where we're headed. And trust me, you won't want to miss it. Until then, keep asking, keep seeking, keep living the sacred disruption. See you next time.